Then a similar issue is if you have the word only. Some books call this an exclusive statement. So that if I say only Asians eat century eggs, you guys know what century eggs?
They're so gross.
Century egg is it's a egg that you bury in the ground apparently for like 100 days, or that's the old way of making them, and then they ferment and they turn.
They're like giant rotten eggs. They're literally green and yellow.
They're green and yellow on the outside, and eaten
No,
with.
they're just buried.
No, they're just fermented. And they
Like
turn
you
like.
throw an egg in the ground, you dig it up 100 days from now. That's what it's gonna look like when you crack it open.
Yeah, it's supposed to be yummy with like porridge.
No, they're
In
no.
porridge.
Yeah, mix them up in porridge. I
Have
guess.
you ever smelled one?
I ate one.
Did you really? Gross.
Yeah, I bought it from an Asian grocery store and took it home and tried to
Was
eat
it
it.
gross?
I couldn't finish it.
That's
Okay, so now I use this example on purpose because it's something unusual. So if we talk about only Asians eat century eggs, one mistake you shouldn't make is to think that means that all Asians eat century eggs, right? Because that doesn't mean that maybe even most Asians don't eat it, right? So it does not mean all Asians eat them, right? Right? It doesn't mean that. Instead, what it means, there's a couple routes you can take to arrive at this conclusion. You can say it means that nobody who's not an Asian eats century eggs, right? So if nobody who's not an Asian eats century eggs, that's the same thing as saying everybody who does eat century eggs is an Asian. So all century egg eaters are Asians, which, as you know, is not true. But that's what the statement is saying anyway, right? All century egg eaters are Asians. Now this one is kind of strange enough that it's probably best to just think of it as a formula and kind of memorize it, right? So anytime you have only A's or B's, just think of that as you take the A and the B, switch them, and make an A statement. So only A's or B's is the same as all B's are A's, right? So if we go through some examples like only Southerners eat Rocky Mountain oysters.
All Rocky Mountain oysters are eaten by someone.
Well, it doesn't mean that they eat all of them, though, right? It's all people who eat them, right? Are Southerners, right? So all Rocky Mountain oyster eaters are Southerners. Only British people eat blood pudding.
Why are you ruining food?
Yeah, blood pudding. Blood pudding's actually quite delicious. Yeah, pig's blood.
Why do you sound so happy?
So if we say only British people eat blood pudding, then we would turn that into what?
All blood pudding eaters are British.
All blood pudding eaters are British, yeah, or British people, right? Just so it's a name of a set, right? That's technically standard form. There has to be a noun there. Okay, so that's best to just think of as a formula that you can always just go back to, rather than trying to think it through every time. Now it's different if you have the only. When you have the phrase the only, that's not the same as only. So if I say the only people in this room are students, right, it means everybody who is in the room is a student. So that would just be all people in the room are students, right? So somehow that's different from saying if I take off the word the, somehow that's backwards from if I just leave the word the there. Now there's one category that's kind of contentious, and that's the what's sometimes called acceptives. When you say everyone except, and many books will say to turn this into two statements. If I say everyone except the A students is a slacker, that's often taken to mean all the non-A students are slackers. And we can only express this in terms of the complement of the A students, right? The non-A students, which causes some confusion. But remember we talked about complements earlier. So it definitely means that all non-A students are slackers, but there's some debate over whether it also means something else. The Hurley textbook says that it means all non-A students are slackers and no A students are slackers. So that when I say accept them, that automatically means that they are not. And the thing is, I don't agree with that. If I say everybody except Bill is coming to the party, like I invited a bunch of people to the party. I invited Al, Bill, Carl, Dave. And then I heard back from Al, Carl, and Dave, and they all said they're coming. And then you asked me, who's coming to the party? And now, if I say everyone except Bill, that means, according to this, that Bill's not coming, right? But that's not what I want to tell you. I want to tell you that I know that everyone I know that all the people who are not Bill are coming. And then Bill, I don't know, he might come, or maybe not. So, but I can't use except to say that. It seems like I should be able to say everyone except Bill is coming to the party. And then I should still be able to say Bill might be coming too, right? Which if except means that he's not, then I can't say that. So I would just defend that except doesn't mean that if I say except for this group, it doesn't mean not that group. It just means they're left out of the statement, right? So when I say everyone except the A students are slackers, it still could be that the A students are slackers too, right? I just haven't said. So I mean, that's how I understand acceptive. So that's something I won't put on a test because it's different in the book. It's different in the Hurley book. It's also different in the Baronet book, I believe. So interesting difference there. Now let me go back to the one that's probably the weirdest of all. If you're dealing with adverbial phrases, we can treat these as categorical statements, expanding, the family of statements we can logically analyze. So if you have a statement like, he wears a suit whenever he goes to work, just think whenever means every time, right? So the categories are going to have to be these abstract things, times or occasions that something happens. And it's not every time he wears a suit, right? Because it's whenever he goes to work. So every time that he goes to work. So we can make that an A statement, and the subject group will be times that he goes to work. The predicate group will be times that he wears a suit. So you end up with this really bizarre sounding statement, but nevertheless that means we could treat this with our sort of logical apparatus. We can analyze this kind of statement. The categories have to be these abstract times. So it's kind of bizarre, but we can come up with it. We can rewrite that as all times that he goes to work are times that he wears a suit. And then likewise, if it's a negative, he never wears a suit when he goes to work. We could rewrite that as an E statement. No times he goes to work are times he wears a suit. Pretty strange sounding. And it could get even stranger if I just leave out the whenever he goes to work and just make it always, right? If I say he always wears a suit, right? As in like, never is he not wearing a suit. Of course, that implies, strictly speaking, that he's wearing a suit. While he's sleeping at night, he's wearing a suit in the shower and everything else. But this would then become all and then always. So just all times at all times, period, are times he wears a suit. So that's an incredibly bizarre sounding sentence, but it just exposes the logical structure of the statement, at least one that we can work with. Okay, so in order to turn these ordinary statements into standard form categorical statements, maybe the best strategy is to think about the two questions about a statement. Is it universal or is it particular? And then is it affirmative or is it negative? Once you answer those two questions, you know that it's either A, E, I, or O. Oops. So then all you have the format or the template sort of all set, and all you have to do is come up with a subject term and a predicate term, and they might be very bizarre sounding, but you just kind of force it into one of those formats. So usually, if you can't tell right away which letter type to use, you can first think about whether it's affirmative or negative. That usually becomes clear, and then whether it's universal or particular.